Welcome. Settle in. Listen to the sound of the city. There is no chaos here. There is only the gentle, calming hum of the civic feed. A constant stream of soft music and reassuring news. It fills every street, every home, every mind. This city is the mandate. It is a metropolis of perfect order. Its towers are gleaming columns of steel and glass. Its streets are swept clean by silent, automated drones. The weather is always mild. The news is always good. The city is a well-oiled machine. It is designed to soothe. It is designed to control. People move along its designated pathways with a placid, unhurried grace. Their expressions are neutral. Their gazes are distant. They are the picture of contentment. A carefully engineered piece. Tonight's story, Gutterpunk Poet, is about a voice that refuses to be quiet. A voice that is not part of the machine. It is the sound of a crack in a perfect, polished surface. A ghost of a world that was meant to be forgotten. The broadcast begins without warning. The soft orchestral music on the civic feed shatters. It is replaced by a sound the city has not heard in decades. The sound of a raw, unaugmented human voice. There is no digital filter. No calming modulation. There is only the sound of air passing through human lungs. The voice is young. It is strong. And it speaks. They sell us sky and shades of gray. And call the silence peace. They trade our names for numbers. And grant a sterile lease. On lives we did not ask for. In towers built of glass. But I remember thunder. And I remember grass. The voice is a shock to the system. A jolt of pure, unfiltered humanity. In a transport tube gliding silently between the spires, a dozen passengers look up from their data slates. Their faces are blank. Confused. This sound is not on the approved playlist. It is an error. A piece of data that does not belong. A man in a gray corporate uniform looks at the woman sitting opposite him. For a fraction of a second, their eyes meet. A spark of shared, forbidden experience passes between them. Then they quickly look away. A worker in a nutrient paste factory stops his repetitive task for a full 10 seconds. The robotic arm he monitors continues its perfect, fluid motions without him. He closes his eyes. He tries to imagine the smell of grass. A scent he has only ever read about in old, censored texts. A supervisor drone hovers near him, its single red optical sensor glowing. The worker quickly resumes his task. But for the rest of his shift, the rhythm of his work is slightly off. In a corporate lobby high in the central spire, a maintenance worker is cleaning the chrome floor. The poet's voice echoes from the lobby's hidden speakers. He looks at the nutrient dispenser on the wall. A machine that offers the same bland, perfectly balanced meal to everyone. Inspired by the verse, he walks over to the machine. He pries open a small service panel. He crosses 2 wires. The flavor setting of the dispenser changes from standard to rage. A small, pointless act. An act of petty rebellion. Far below, in the grimy underlevels of the mandate, a group of teenagers starts to spray paint a symbol on the wall. A simple, elegant sound wave. The mark of the poet they call Echo. High in the central comms core tower, Administrator Valerius heard the intrusion. Her office was a place of absolute silence and order. A minimalist space of white walls and black chrome. Even the air she breathed was filtered to a degree of purity unknown to the rest of the city. She despised chaos. She despised noise. And this broadcast was the ugliest noise she had ever heard. She had been born during the chaos times, the period of social collapse before the mandate was established. She remembered the riots, the uncertainty, the fear. To her, order was not a convenience. It was salvation. And this poet, this echo, was a voice from the past she had worked her entire life to bury. On her main console, red alerts flashed. Reports of the illegal broadcast flooded in from every sector. They were followed by reports of the small, insignificant acts of defiance. The graffiti. The work stoppage. The flavor change. To her, these were not petty incidents. They were symptoms of a disease. A virus of dissent that, if left unchecked, could unravel the perfect, fragile peace she had sworn to protect. "Triangulate the signal," she commanded. Her voice was cold, precise. Now, her technicians, arrayed in the control room below her office, scrambled. Their fingers flew across holographic interfaces. "The signal is analog, Administrator," one of them reported. His voice was laced with frustration. "He is finding dead spots in the digital network. Places where the new infrastructure has not fully replaced the old. He injects his signal there. It's an old-world technique. By the time we pinpoint the sector, he is gone." Valerius's jaw tightened. This was not a sophisticated hacker. This was a barbarian shouting into the void. It was crude. It was vulgar. And it was effective. It was a problem she had to solve. Personally. "Then upgrade your sensors," she said. "I want this noise silenced. I want this ghost erased from my network. Permanently." Far below the gleaming towers of Comscore, in a forgotten subway station, Reese watched the city go dark. He was Echo. He leaned back from a scavenged microphone, his body humming with adrenaline. The broadcast was over. He had spoken his truth. Now he had to disappear. His sanctuary was a small, soundproofed maintenance chamber deep in the abandoned tunnels. The air was thick with the smell of dust and ozone. The room was a chaotic nest of wires and scavenged analog equipment. Old broadcast consoles were stacked against one wall. Power cells, recharged by siphoning energy from the city grid, lined another. And everywhere there were books. Real, paper books filled with the poetry of a dead world. He had rescued them from recycling centers and the forgotten libraries of the underside. They were his most precious possession. His only link to a time when 1,000,000 voices were allowed to speak. Sela, his only partner in this rebellion, was already shutting down the equipment. She was a brilliant scavenger, a master of making old technology sing. She was the one who had built this pirate radio station from scraps. She was the practical heart of their operation. They had grown up together in a corporate orphanage. A place where individuality was punished and conformity was rewarded. Reese had been the one who told stories in the dark of the dormitories. Sela had been the one who figured out how to bypass the locks to get them extra food. They had been a team ever since. "That was a good one, Reese," she said. She did not look up from her work. "The poem about the grass. It was nice." Reese smiled. He was charismatic, even in the dim light of the chamber. His face was sharp. His eyes were bright with a defiant energy. "Nice is not what I was aiming for, Sela." "I know," she said. She finally looked at him. Her face was smudged with grease. Her expression was serious. "They are getting faster. Their triangulation sweeps are more precise every time. They were only a few seconds behind you tonight." "We were lucky," Reese shrugged. He ran a hand through his messy hair. "Let them sweep. They are looking for a digital ghost. We are just a voice in a metal box. This box is not as safe as you think," she warned. "I've been monitoring their chatter on the back channels. They are deploying new sensors throughout the lower-level tunnels. Sniffers that can detect analog energy signatures. It is getting more dangerous." He walked over to a small table. It was covered in handwritten notes. Scraps of paper filled with crossed-out lines and new ideas. He picked up a page. He was already thinking about the next poem, the next broadcast. The risk was the point. The danger was the ink he wrote with. "We are dangerous," he said softly. "That is the whole idea." Sela sighed. She knew that look in his eyes. The look of a man who would rather burn out than fade away. She looked at the scavenged equipment around them. She looked at the wild, determined look on Rhys's face. She knew she could not stop him. All she could do was try to protect him. "Just be careful, Rhys," she said. "A voice can be silenced. And I don't want to be alone down here." He looked at her. His defiant expression softened for a moment. He nodded. "I will be careful." But they both knew it was a lie. He would never be careful. It was not in his nature. He was a poet, and his poems demanded to be heard. Rhys decided that his next broadcast would be his most ambitious. The annual Founders' Day celebration was in 2 days. It was the mandate's biggest public holiday. A day of holographic parades, of patriotic music played on the civic feed, of mandatory public gatherings in the city's plazas. It was a day of enforced joy, a celebration of the sterile peace the corporations had created. It was the perfect target. "Founders' Day?" Sela said. Her eyes were wide with alarm. "Rhys, that's insane. Security will be at maximum. Every sensor they have will be active. They will be listening for you." "Exactly," Rhys said. He was pacing their small chamber, his energy almost manic. "The entire city will be listening. It will be my largest audience. I will have a chance to speak to everyone, from the highest spire to the deepest gutter." He had a new poem. It was his best yet. It was not just about defiance. It was about the lie at the heart of Founders' Day. The lie that the city's sterile order was a gift. He would remind them of what they had lost. The beautiful, chaotic, messy freedom of the old world. "We can't handle that kind of security sweep," Sela insisted. "Our equipment is old. We are outmatched." "Then we will be faster," Rhys said, his eyes burning with conviction. "A short broadcast. 1 poem. In and out before they can get a lock." Sela looked at the scavenged equipment around them. The power cells were already showing signs of strain. The broadcast amplifier was prone to overheating. She knew the risks better than he did. But she also knew the importance of his words. She nodded slowly. "I will need to boost the power core," she said, her voice resigned. "It will increase our signal strength. But it will also make us easier to detect. The broadcast window will be less than a minute. Maybe only 45 seconds. A minute is all I need," Rhys said. In her silent, white office, Administrator Valerius was also preparing for Founders' Day. She was reviewing the security protocols for the Civic Feed broadcast. It had to be perfect. A seamless presentation of corporate unity and civic pride. The disruptions caused by the gutterpunk poet were a stain on her record, a source of personal and professional embarrassment. Her technicians had reported their failures to her with downcast eyes. The poet was too fast. His signal was too elusive. Valerius had grown tired of their excuses. She had authorized a new, more aggressive tactic. A weapon that had only been used in theory. It was called a feedback pulse. "Explain it to me again," she said to her chief technician. Her voice was flat, emotionless. The technician was a nervous man. He fidgeted with his data slate. "Administrator, the feedback pulse is extreme. When we detect the analog signal, we can lock onto its frequency. The pulse sends a massive surge of sonic and electrical energy back along the signal's path. It will follow the broadcast wave directly to its source. And what happens at the source? Valerius asked. The technician swallowed hard. The energy surge will overload any broadcast equipment. It will cause it to explode violently. It will also release a debilitating sonic wave. Anyone near the source will be silenced, potentially permanently. Valerius considered this for a moment. She looked at a report on her console. A report detailing the continued spread of the poet's soundwave symbol. It was appearing in more and more sectors. A quiet, spreading infection. It is a targeted surgical strike, the technician added quickly. There will be no collateral damage to the city's infrastructure. Valerius looked out her window at the perfectly ordered city below. Her city. Her network. Her peace. She thought of the raw, angry voice of the poet. The sound of chaos. The sound of rebellion. The target is not infrastructure, she said. The target is a disease. When you find a disease, you do not just treat the symptoms. You burn out the source. She turned back to her technician. Her eyes were cold and clear. Authorize the feedback pulse, she commanded. The next time he broadcasts, find the source. And burn it out. The technician paled slightly. But he nodded. Yes, Administrator. The stage was set. The poet prepared his words. The censor prepared her weapon. And the city of the mandate held its breath, waiting for the celebration to begin. A celebration of silence. Or a celebration of a single, defiant voice. The moments before the broadcast were a ritual of quiet tension. Reese sat before the microphone, not writing, but remembering. The city above was preparing for its grandest lie, and he was preparing his deepest truth. He closed his eyes, shutting out the cluttered, makeshift studio. He summoned a memory. His father, a man with grease-stained hands and a tired smile, reading to him from a forbidden paper book. A story of a world with more than one sun, a world of impossible colors. He remembered his mother, a woman with a voice like clear water, singing a lullaby that was not on the civic feed. A song of rebellion, its meaning hidden in soft, gentle verses. These memories were the source, the well from which he drew his words. He picked up his stylus. He began to write on a blank data slate, the words flowing from a place of deep, personal grief and love. Sela worked on the broadcast equipment. Her face was a mask of concentration. She was not just boosting the core. She was performing open-heart surgery on a dying machine. She carefully bypassed the main safety governors, her tools moving with the precision of a surgeon. She rerouted the primary coolant tubes to a secondary, less efficient system. The main power core began to glow with a dangerous, unstable energy. For a moment, a high-pitched whine filled the chamber. The core threatened to overload. Sela manually stabilized the energy flow, her hands a blur on the control panel. The whine subsided into a low, powerful hum. The machine was a bomb, but for a few precious seconds, it would sing the most powerful song of its life. It's ready, she said, her voice tight. 45 seconds, Reese. Not a second more. Then we pull the plug and run. He looked up from his slate. He nodded. Thank you, Sela. Don't thank me yet, she said. Just make it count. In the comms core tower, Administrator Valerius was also making her final preparations. She stood on an observation deck, looking down at the perfectly synchronized holographic parade. She felt nothing. No pride. No joy. Only the cool satisfaction of a complex system running flawlessly. She saw a junior technician approach her. He looked nervous. Administrator, he began, his voice hesitant. Regarding the feedback pulse. It is classified as a lethal force implement under the mandate's own charter. Its use on a civilian target requires. Valerius cut him off. Her voice was ice. The target is not a civilian. The target is a source of system instability. A virus. We do not negotiate with a virus. We eradicate it. System stability is paramount. Is that understood? Yes, Administrator, the technician said quickly, looking down at the floor. Good, she said. Go back to your station. And be ready. The city of the Mandate was a sea of enforced celebration. The anthem played. The holographic founders waved their benevolent, transparent hands at the placid crowds. The illusion of peace was perfect. And then Echo's voice tore it all apart. They speak of founders clad in chrome, who built these towers to the sky. They never speak of hands and bone, of ghosts on whom these foundations lie. They show us strength in polished steel, in circuits humming, clean and bright. They hide the hungry, desperate feel of children crying in the night. The effect was profound. A stone shattering a perfect mirror. On a high-speed transport, a man in a gray uniform stood up. He walked to the emergency stop panel. He slammed his hand down. The entire train screeched to a halt on the tracks. He stood there, his head bowed, just listening. In a high-rise apartment, an elderly woman who remembered the case times began to weep silently. She had not heard a real poem in 50 years. A city's heart is not in steel, or data streams that flow and cease. It's in the memories you can feel. A stolen moment of wild peace. It's in the stories that we tell, when all the screens have gone to black. A whispered hope, a broken spell. A history they can't take back. The low-level imaging technician, his heart pounding, did more than just flicker the parade. He found the central control for the holographic founders. With a few keystrokes, he replaced the placid face of the main founder with the simple, elegant soundwave symbol of Echo. For 10 full seconds, the symbol of rebellion, 100 feet tall, looked out over the main plaza. And from the crowd, a new sound began. A low human hum. It started with one person, then another, then a dozen, 100, 1,000. It was not a riot. It was not a protest. It was a sound of shared awakening. A sound Valerius could not control. She saw it all on her monitors. The stopped train. The giant soundwave symbol. The humming. This was it. The chaos she had dedicated her life to preventing. He is not a poet, she whispered to the empty room. He is a contagion. She turned to her console. She opened a channel to the security team. Signal locked? Locked and confirmed, Administrator, the technician's voice replied. Launch the pulse, Valerius said. In the hideout, Sela saw the warning. A crimson line of text screaming across her console. Incoming energy surge. Feedback imminent. Reese, get back! She yelled. She launched herself across the small room. She tackled him, pulling him away from the microphone stand, away from the heart of the machine. He was in the middle of his final verse. A verse of hope. A verse of fire. So let them build their perfect cage. He never got to finish it. The feedback pulse arrived. It did not travel through the air. It traveled through the broadcast itself. A spear of pure energy moving at the speed of light. The hideout erupted. The power core detonated first. The consoles and amplifiers exploded in a blinding flash of white light. Vacuum tubes burst like tiny grenades, spraying the walls with superheated glass. The old microphone Reese had been holding melted into a slag of unrecognizable metal. A shockwave of concussive force and pure sound ripped through the chamber. It cracked the concrete walls. It threw Reese and Sela against the far end of the tunnel like fallen leaves in a hurricane. The last thing Reese felt was a searing, tearing pain in his throat. The last thing he heard was a sound like the world being ripped in half. Then there was only a high-pitched ringing. And then, a profound, terrifying silence. He awoke to the smell of burning plastic. He was lying on the cold concrete floor. The chamber was a ruin. A tomb of blackened, molten metal. He pushed himself up. His head was pounding. Every part of his body ached. He saw Sela a few feet away. She was unconscious. A deep, angry burn ran the length of her arm where she had been touching a console. "Sela," he tried to say. The sound that came out was a broken, painful rasp. A dry, scratching noise that felt like swallowing razor blades. He tried again. Pain, sharp and searing, shot through his throat. He touched his neck. It felt bruised. Swollen. The sonic blast from the feedback pulse had torn through his vocal cords. His greatest weapon. His voice. It was shattered. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the haze of his concussion. He crawled over to Sela. He shook her gently. Her eyes fluttered open. She coughed, a dry, racking sound. "Reese?" she whispered. Her voice was hoarse. "What happened?" He opened his mouth to answer. No words came. He could only make a choked, guttural sound. The terror and despair in his eyes was answer enough. They had to leave. The blast had not just destroyed their sanctuary. It had been a beacon. A flare that had given away their physical location. He could already hear a distant, methodical sound echoing from the main tunnels. The rhythmic clang of magnetic boots on concrete. The soft, menacing whir of patrol drones. Comscore security teams were sweeping the subway system. They were hunting. He helped Sela to her feet. She was limping. The burn on her arm was severe. But she was alive. She was a survivor. She looked at the wreckage of their equipment. A look of profound loss crossed her face. Then her expression hardened. She grabbed the small, shielded data slate from a charging port that had miraculously survived. It contained digital copies of all his poems. "Come on," she rasped, pulling him toward a hidden exit behind a loose section of the wall. "There is nothing left for us here." They slipped into the deeper, unmapped tunnels of the old subway system. They were ghosts now in truth, fleeing through the darkness. The hunt was on. They navigated the labyrinth by touch and memory. They moved through tunnels choked with the roots of ancient, mutated fungi. They waded through sections flooded with black, stagnant water. The footsteps of the security patrols grew louder. Then they faded as they took a side passage. They hid in damp, dark alcoves, holding their breath as the sweeping searchlights of patrol drones cut through the darkness. Reese's inability to speak was a constant torment. He wanted to shout warnings, to whisper encouragements to Sela. He felt a new kind of helplessness. He was a body without a voice, relying completely on Sela's strength and ingenuity. They were cornered once. A patrol team blocked the tunnel ahead. A drone was closing in from behind. Reese felt a surge of despair. It was over. But Sela did not panic. She pulled a small, jury-rigged device from her pocket. A signal jammer. She activated it. The patrol drone's light flickered and died. The patrol team's comms filled with static. In the confusion, Sela pulled Reese into a narrow, vertical maintenance shaft he had never seen before. They climbed, their hands and feet finding holds in the darkness. They left the hunters behind. They traveled for what felt like days, deeper and deeper into the foundations of the city. Finally, they reached it. A massive, reinforced door, hidden behind a waterfall of leaking sewage. It was the entrance to the place of legends, the community of outcasts known as the Foundation. Sela knocked a specific, rhythmic pattern on the door. A small slot slid open. A pair of wary eyes peered out. Sela gave a password. After a long moment, the door groaned open. They stumbled inside. Sela, her strength finally gone, collapsed to the floor. The door boomed shut behind them. They were safe. For now. Rhys knelt beside Sela, his heart a cold, heavy stone in his chest. He looked at the wary faces of the outcasts who surrounded them. He opened his mouth. He wanted to thank them, to tell them who he was. But no sound came out. He touched his throat. He felt the profound, aching silence within. The fire of his broadcast was extinguished, and he was afraid that his last echo had already faded away. They were taken into the heart of the Foundation. It was a place of steam and shadows. A makeshift city built in the cavernous, echoing shell of a long-dead geothermal power plant. Walkways made of scavenged metal connected different levels. Hydroponic gardens, lit by salvaged glow panels, provided a strange, green light and the faint, earthy smell of real vegetation. The air was warm and humid. It was a world away from the cold, sterile order of the mandate above. These were the city's forgotten children, the erased. The dissenters who had chosen a life of hardship and freedom over one of comfort and control. Sela was taken to the infirmary. It was a clean, well-lit space carved out of an old control room. The doctor was an old man with tired eyes and remarkably steady hands. He had once been a renowned surgeon in the upper spires, before his conscience had forced him into exile. He treated the severe burn on Sela's arm with a quiet efficiency, using regenerated skin grafts grown in their own labs. Then he examined Rhys. He scanned his throat with a portable medical imager. He looked at the results on his screen for a long time. His expression was grim. The sonic blast was incredibly precise, the doctor said. His voice was a low, gentle rumble. It was designed to cause maximum trauma to the larynx. The scarring is deep. Your vocal cords are permanently damaged. Rhys stared at him, his heart a cold, heavy stone in his chest. He gestured to his throat, a silent, desperate question. The doctor shook his head slowly. Your broadcasting voice, the power and clarity you had, it is gone. Forever. With time and therapy, you may regain the ability to speak, to whisper. But you will never shout again. The words were a death sentence. A poet without a voice. An echo without a sound. Rhys turned away. He walked out of the infirmary and into the steam-filled corridors of the Foundation. He was a ghost. 4 days he wandered. He watched the people of the Foundation go about their lives. He saw the engineers maintaining the life support systems, the farmers tending the hydroponic gardens, the teachers schooling the children in a history that was not approved by Comscore. This was a real community, a place of struggle and strength. And he felt like an outsider, a failed symbol. He had brought fire and ruin upon Sela. He had lost his own gift. He had nothing left to offer. He tried to write. He would sit for hours with the data slates Sela had saved. But the words felt hollow, dead on the page. They were meant to be spoken, to be hurled at the city like stones. Without his voice to give them life, they were just letters. He was filled with a profound, aching despair. A silence that was deeper and more terrifying than the one the mandate enforced. While Rhys was lost in his grief, Sela was healing. Her natural resilience, forged in the harsh realities of their childhood, took over. She did not see the Foundation as a place of exile. She saw it as a place of opportunity. A place with resources, with allies. Her arm was bandaged, but her mind was sharp. She started working with the Foundation's engineers. She shared her knowledge of Comscore's network. She learned about their own hidden data taps and communication systems. She was not a poet. She was a builder. And she was already planning their next move. One evening, she found Reese in a quiet, forgotten corner of the plant. He was sitting on a rusted catwalk, looking down at a massive, silent turbine that had not spun in a century. "You think you failed, don't you?" she said softly. He looked at her. His eyes were hollow. He nodded. "You're a fool," she said. But she was smiling. She held up the data slate she had been working on. Its screen was glowing. "You have to see this." She showed him what was happening in the city above. The mandate was not the same. His final broadcast had been cut short. But it had been the spark. She showed him a live feed from a security drone. The soundwave graffiti was everywhere. But it was changing. Artists were incorporating it into massive, beautiful murals. A stylized soundwave became the stem of a flower growing through a crack in the concrete. Another was woven into the wings of a phoenix rising from flames. She showed him internal comms core reports. Worker productivity had dropped by 7% citywide. The cause was a series of small, coordinated work stoppages. A new form of protest called a silent echo. For 1 minute, at random times, entire sectors of the city's workforce would simply go still. A silent tribute to the voice they had lost. His last poem, recorded by thousands before the feed was cut, was now the most shared illegal file in the city's history. It was spreading through hidden, peer-to-peer networks. A virus of words. "You're not a voice anymore, Reese," Sela said, her eyes shining in the dim light. "You're a symbol. You're everywhere. Your silence is louder than your voice ever was." Administrator Valerius saw the same reports. And she was furious. She had silenced the source. But the infection was spreading virally. Her response was to tighten her grip. She ordered the civic feed to play the patriotic anthem louder, to broadcast messages of unity and compliance on a constant loop. She implemented new protocols. Patrol drones now had audio sensors to detect dissentious tones in conversations. Random data slate inspections became a part of daily life. Her perfect, ordered city was becoming a loud, oppressive police state. And her obsession with crushing the idea of echo was only making the city's residents more resentful, more rebellious. Sela came to Reese a few days later. He was sitting alone, staring at a blank page. He had tried to whisper a line of poetry. The weak, painful sound had broken him. Sela held up the data slate she had saved from the fire. The one that held all his poems. "Your voice is hurt, Reese," she said gently. "Not your words. The voice was just a delivery system. We need to build a new one." She had a plan. A new idea. A new form of rebellion, born from her collaboration with the engineers of the Foundation. "We can't hijack the audio feed anymore," she explained. "It's too heavily guarded. Valerius has locked it down." But the visual feed for the public screens, it runs on a different subsystem. An older, less secure one. They are so focused on listening for your voice. They have forgotten how to watch. The final scene was not a single, dramatic broadcast. It was something quieter. Something more resilient. A few weeks later, Administrator Valerius was delivering a citywide address from her office. Her calm, composed face filled the giant holographic screens in every plaza. She spoke of order, of compliance, of the seamless perfection of the mandate. Then it began. Her face on the giant screens did not vanish. It was not replaced. But silent, white text began to scroll over it. It was a new poem from Echo. "You tried to silence the one voice, but gave a million voices cause. You cannot legislate our choice. to find the meaning in a pause. In her sterile office, Valerius watched in horror as her own broadcast became a canvas for the very rebellion she had tried to crush. Her technicians were in a panic. The signal was not coming from one source. It was coming from hundreds of small, low-power textcasters hidden throughout the city. They were hidden in plain sight, disguised as power conduits, as ventilation grates, as loose bricks in a wall. They could shut one down, but a dozen more would take its place. Your perfect city has a flaw. A ghost that lives inside the code. A whispered, fundamental law. A story on a heavy road. The silence that you try to make is filled with words you cannot hear. A promise that you cannot break. The end of silence. The end of fear. Valerius stared at the words scrolling over her own face. She saw her own power, her own authority, being overwritten by silent, defiant words. She screamed in fury. A raw, uncontrolled sound of pure rage. Her microphone was still live. Her scream of frustration was broadcast to the entire city. And in that moment, the people of the Mandate saw the truth. Their calm, composed leader was the one who was truly a slave to chaos. The story ends in a quiet, firelit corner of the Foundation. Reese's voice was a permanent, painful whisper. He could speak, but only softly. Only to those who leaned in close to listen. He was surrounded by a small group of children. The children of the erased. The forgotten. He was not broadcasting to the city. He was teaching. He had written a single word on a salvaged piece of slate. The word was hope. He pointed to it. He showed them how it was formed. He whispered its meaning. He could no longer be the city's broadcasted echo. He could no longer be a single, powerful point of failure. He had become something more. Something more lasting. The quiet curator of a movement. Sela was beside him. She was working on a new device. A way to make their network of textcasters even more resilient. Even more decentralized. Reese handed a young girl a stylus. He encouraged her to write her own verse. The rebellion was no longer his. It belonged to everyone. A quiet, growing network of words and ideas, spreading from the city's deepest roots. And it was a network that could never be silenced.